Layering fragrances. So, a lot of people don't know, or they do and they haven't tried it yet. You can layer fragrances. You get one fragrance, you put it on, you put on another one as well. And the thing about layering fragrances is that there is a little bit of a technique to it. Because you could very easily layer fragrances and then smell horrible for the rest of the day. So, if you want to avoid that, I have some tips. So, first, before anything, start with some lotion or oil. And the thing about lotion and oil, once you put it on your skin, that will act as a really good foundation for your fragrances, because fragrances prefer to stick and hold on to lotion or oil rather than your bare skin, because those molecules just prefer to stick to the lotion. So that'll make it last longer. You won't have to reapply it really that much throughout the day. It's just more efficient, plus it's good for your skin. It'll act as a barrier because perfume is mostly alcohol. Putting alcohol on your skin isn't great for your skin, especially if you have sensitive skin. But if you put lotion or oil on first, then put the fragrance on, it'll act as a nice barrier, your skin will be fine and moisturized. Besides that, once you do that, then you can move on to actually layering your perfumes. So, the thing with layering your fragrances, you have to realize that some notes do not go well with others. And I mean, there are so many combinations of fragrances because, of course, each fragrance is going to have multiple notes. So you have to kind of closely consider which notes are in each fragrance. And for instance, say you want to use a musky fragrance. That musky fragrance may not go well with, say, a very sugary, syrupy sort of fragrance. You know, you might get this sugary approach and then it's immediately cut in half by very heavy, animalistic musky notes. You know, it might not smell great. The thing about layering fragrances is that there is a lot of trial and error. Because, like I said, some fragrances just will not blend together. A good cautious way to do it is just, like I said, put the lotion on, then put on one fragrance. Let it rest for like a couple minutes. That'll give it time to soak into your skin. Then put the other fragrance on, let that soak in. Don't judge it immediately because the opening of the fragrance is likely going to be very different from how it actually settles on the skin after a few minutes. So always give it some time. Don't immediately dismiss it if it doesn't smell great right away, because it might become better smelling in a few minutes. That is based mainly on the base notes that each fragrance has, because the top notes and the middle notes are more superficial. They're not going to be super long lasting, but the base notes will be long lasting. So a good rule of thumb is to kind of pair fragrances based on their base notes, because fortunately a lot of fragrances have very similar base notes, usually, you know, amber, musk, wood notes, maybe some spices depending. But depending on the base notes, you could do a pretty good job of complementing and amplifying your fragrances. So say you have two relatively different fragrances, maybe a kind of citrusy fresh fragrance versus a more floral or maybe slightly musky fragrance. So on the surface, those two fragrances are quite different because of their top and middle notes, but maybe their base notes are relatively similar. Putting those two on at the same time, they may not smell great together at first, but like I said, letting them kind of marinate for a few minutes, those base notes will eventually shine through and complement each other. And you'll be left with a very interesting and hopefully pleasant smelling concoction. And the great thing about layering fragrances is that you can create these combinations that no one else has, or, you know, most people won't even know exist, because despite there being so many fragrances out there, there are more to be created when you mix them. And that's kind of a fun thing to experiment with if you want to just wear something interesting, something that, you know, no one else has. Especially, you know, there are so many very popular fragrances these days. Maybe you want to do, you don't want to smell like everyone else. You want to smell more unique, more original. So you could easily come across something new and interesting just by playing around with different fragrances. And like I said, it might take some time to come up with combinations that work really well. Some might just not be that great. They might just bounce off each other. But through some trial and error, you should definitely find plenty of great combinations. And, there are always new combinations to try. It's kind of like alchemy, almost. But I personally like kind of experimenting with fragrances that you would expect to clash. For example, a musky fragrance versus a floral powdery fragrance. Mixing those, you wouldn't expect they would work, but sometimes they work. You wouldn't expect it, but it happens. And, maybe that musk grounds the floral powdery nature of that other fragrance and makes it more interesting, more complex, more just has more personality, So pretty much, mix whatever you want. Maybe try to mix fragrances that already have something in common, kind of a common denominator. But even if you choose completely different fragrances, it still can sometimes work. Other times it might be horrible. So like I said, trial and error. But those are pretty much the main tips I have for layering, blending fragrances. If you have any opinions about that, you can always leave those down in the comment section below. If you liked the video, leave a like, maybe subscribe, and I make videos throughout the week, so stick around for those.